Talks to end the fighting in Syria have been thrown into doubt tonight after the United Nations unexpectedly invited Iran. Syrian opposition leaders are meeting right now to decide whether to boycott the conference due to start in Geneva on Wednesday. They're angry at the inclusion of Iran, a powerful backer of the Assad regime. But the UN chief Ban Ki-moon is now holding intensive and urgent discussions to save the talks from collapse, as our international editor Lindsay Hilsum now reports.
Syrian state TV showed President Bashar al-Assad briefing his delegation before they left for Switzerland. He doesn't seem to think the peace talks should result in his resignation, as the Americans and British keep saying. He says the meeting is to discuss defeating his enemies, whom he brands terrorists.
The first thing we're saying is that the Geneva conference must lead to clear results regarding the fight against terrorism in Syria, specifically putting pressure on the countries supporting terrorism in Syria by sending fighters and money, namely Saudi Arabia and Turkey, and of course the Western countries that are acting as a political cover for these terrorist organizations.
The government continues to drop barrel bombs on Aleppo and other rebel-held areas. There's no doubt of the need for peace, but the rebels are now changing their mind about going to the talks.
I believe strongly that Iran needs to be part of the solution to the Syrian crisis.
Last night, the UN Secretary-General suddenly invited Iran, which arms and supports the regime. That threw the Security Council into a flurry today, because the Iranians haven't signed up to the last Geneva communique calling for a transitional government. Ban Ki-moon started to backtrack.
Intensive and urgent discussions are underway.
The Syrian ambassador looked on. The Geneva talks were on the brink of collapse.
As of this morning, Iran still has yet to demonstrate its willingness to explicitly and publicly subscribe to the full implementation of the Geneva communique. That is a minimum requirement for participation in this peace process.
On the streets of Aleppo, the issue is how to survive. Now, the already reluctant rebel delegations say they won't go to Geneva if Iran is there. The chances of the talks bringing peace were small. Now they may not happen at all.
Well, now, even amid the democracy, even amid these talks in Geneva, which may or may not happen, the revelations coming out of Syria have produced yet another horrific moment.
Yeah, this is breaking news. It's just come out, and I'm going to warn viewers now that the images we're about to show are horrific. You may not want to look. You certainly don't want your children to look at them. What has happened is that 27,000 images of torture in President Assad's jails have just been publicised. Now, what we're talking about is mainly pictures of men between the ages of 20 and 40. Some of them appear to have starved to death, others have been strangled, others have been tortured. Now, these pictures were allegedly smuggled out of Syria by a military police photographer, a man who's just calling himself Caesar. He went to Qatar. Qatar is obviously a country which is a great enemy of President Assad. And the Qataris, they commissioned a report on this. They commissioned very well-respected legal experts, people who've been in the War Crimes Tribunal on Sierra Leone. They've looked at these images. They say this is evidence of war crimes. Now, they may or may not be right. The Qataris are certainly publicising this now to get it out before the Geneva II talks, and I think it makes those talks even more fraught than they were already.